Tous de DDO, attention pour les deux comptes finales. 10, 9, 8, 7.
It's morning launch, almost 3:30, and we're gonna make our fueling go or no go call soon.
Okay, take it away, Rob. It's all yours.
Merry Christmas from the Guyana Space Center, where fueling of the vehicle is moments away, while Webb systems are being carefully monitored for the momentous launch of the largest, most powerful telescope ever sent away from our planet.
It is the product of a feat of human ingenuity.
14 countries all working together.
We want to look back and see some of the very first stars and galaxies that were born in the early universe.
What we call cosmic dawn.
We have to accept the fact that we are in a risky business.
Everybody said if
there's a little pond down here. Yes, there still is. Used to come fishing here occasionally.
Well, I would like to tell you the entire story of the universe and a bit about how we learned about it and my personal part of this process and where we're going from here. And the title slide here says, from the Big Bang and on, etc., to the discovery of alien life. And so we haven't exactly found it yet, but I think it's possible in the next few decades. And so I want to outline at the very end how we are hoping to find out about that. So there are many, many mysteries.
I got interested in math and science when I was a little kid.
Here is a picture of the place where I grew up.
My dad was a scientist, but he studied dairy cows. I heard from him that people are made out of cells with chromosomes. I can remember I was about 6 years old and I'd heard about infinity. Well, that's pretty fascinating. So, okay, I want to know more about this. By 8 years old, I was reading Galileo and Darwin biographies and getting all the books about science I could get from the public library. I latched on pretty early. I knew when I got into the mission that it was going to be exciting. I said, this is the coolest thing that I've ever heard of. This is what I want to work on. And I do not care how hard it is or how long it's going to take. I just want to work on it and make it happen.
I love the feeling of awe, but then sharing that excitement with someone is then the next best feeling in the world.
It's super close, but it's not.
Oh, these two? One of the things growing up in the city that we didn't really ever see was the sky. I do remember sort of one of these like core childhood memories is going up to Canada on a family vacation and my parents ushering me outside one night to look at the Milky Way. And I didn't understand what it was. And I was like, there's milk up there? They're like, no. That's our solar system. And we're looking up at all the stars that you wouldn't otherwise see. And I really didn't comprehend because I had no exposure to that prior in my life. And here I am, years later, following the astonishing story of the James Webb Space Telescope.
Nature has this way of being even more creative than we are. So we have always been surprised by what we see in the sky.
This is a really tremendous adventure that we've been on.
The first Hubble Deep Field actually came out when I was in high school. I already knew I wanted to be an astronomer, but I remember being just captivated by these images that were coming back from Hubble. It blew my mind to see that first deep field image, and that was sort of a, like, yep, this is what I want to do.
The earliest conception of Webb derived from the fact that Hubble took a deep field and didn't see newly formed galaxies after the birth of the universe.
It's sort of like we're missing that very first piece of the puzzle of how galaxies got their start.
Every time NASA builds a new telescope,
it needs to be way more sensitive than anything we've ever built before. So every time you launch something, it was a new window on the universe. And so for Webb, we needed to build something that was 100 times more capable.
The main thing that Webb had to do to be successful was find these very first galaxies.
To look back in time to a part of space that we've never seen before and see the very first epoch of galaxies that were born after the Big Bang.
People think the Big Bang is a mystery because they think it's not what it is. The actual picture that we have as astronomers is the entire universe is expanding. The material is rushing apart from other material in a rather smooth, continuous way. Well, we see the galaxies rushing away from us. So what's going to make them rush apart? Well, something kicked them off that way. But since we imagine the universe is infinite, it has to be an infinitely large cause, whatever that is. So we just imagine running the movie backwards in our minds until it's different. So when you get farther enough back in time, the temperature, everything's mushed together. The galaxies are mushed together, the stars are mushed together, the atoms are mushed together, the atoms are torn apart into their constituent subatomic particles. So that's the movie you get if you run everything backwards. So then when you run out of imagine, you say, that's the Big Bang. So needless to say, astronomers have been imagining for a long time, what was this?
What would you call it if you could name it?
I just call it the expanding universe story. In Calvin and Hobbes, there was a different answer. Calvin called it the horrendous space kablooey. But that didn't catch.
And I now ask you to step forward to receive your Nobel Prizes from the hands of His Majesty, the King.
And it was March of 1996 when John Mather stopped in my office out here at Goddard and asked me if I'd like to work with him on a new telescope idea he was thinking about. And when John came by and said this, of course, this was before he had his Nobel Prize, but everybody knew, oh, if John asked you to work with him, you want to work with him. So I said, sure, that would be fun. I figured, well, I'd do that for a couple of years.
So, Dr. Smith, what is a next-generation space telescope?
Well, the NGST, or Next Generation Space Telescope, is the logical successor to the Hubble Space Telescope, or HST. NGST is designed to see the first stars and galaxies that light up in the universe.
And, well, here we are, more than 25 years later. I'm still working on Webb.
Apollo 8, over. Hello, Apollo 8. Loud and clear.
Administrator O'Keefe renamed the Next Generation Space Telescope to the James Webb Space Telescope in honor of James Webb, who was the second administrator of NASA. So why name it after this guy? Well, James Webb was largely responsible for the success of the Apollo program.
So you're going to have both science and technology appreciating your leadership in this field. I think this can be an asset, this program. I think in time, it's like a lot of things. It's sort of mid-journey, and therefore, what the hell are we making this trip for? That's right. But at the end of the thing, they may be glad we made it.
Houston, Columbia on the high gate, over.
Roger, the EVA is progressing beautifully.
The Webb telescope is kind of like my child, because I've been working on it since the first day that we started.
So when I started on Webb, my youngest son had just been born. Well, he's got a master's degree, works at Johns Hopkins, and he's going to be 28. I had hair. I didn't need hearing aids or glasses. And yeah, it's a long time, but in hindsight, it's also a short time. We had this singular purpose for 25 years to make the James Webb Space Telescope a reality. And, people did think we were nuts at first because the technical challenges were so daunting, and the number of things we had to advance or literally invent were numerous.
I remember we had a draftsman who was able to draw what we said on a whiteboard, and we said we needed a big telescope with a big baffle, a big umbrella to protect it from the heat of the sun. So he drew this on the whiteboard, and we all said, yeah, that looks pretty good. We need something like that. And it's going to have to fold up. And we started talking about how to fold it up. And that was just the beginning, and we knew we were onto something.
In the early parts of the mission, we talk to the scientists, and we find out what's the scientific objectives of this mission. What do you want it to do? right? Then we put that into a language that engineers understand called requirements. How big does it have to be? What kind of sensitivity do you want? In other words, what's the dimmest thing you want to see?
The James Webb Observatory has 3 parts to it. The first part is the telescope and the science instruments. This has to be very, very cold.
It's designed to collect infrared light. So infrared is something that you cannot really see with your eyes. The Hubble telescope can see a little bit of it, but it's not cold. So the Hubble telescope glows and emits infrared light itself, so you cannot use it to do all of the things that astronomers have identified as their next top priority. This telescope is going to be in outer space. It's going to be cooled to a very low temperature of 45 degrees above absolute zero, so that it does not glow.
There's one instrument in there called the MIRI that wants to be about 7 degrees Kelvin. And to put that in perspective, dry ice, carbon dioxide dry ice, is at about minus 109 degrees Fahrenheit. The second part is the spacecraft bus. And the spacecraft bus operates at room temperature, up here at 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and it has the usual subsystems, the communication subsystem, the computer, the thrusters, the electrical power system. Then, between the two, is the third part, the sun shield. 5 thin layers about the size of a tennis court that separate the hot side from the cold side. 5 little layers that keep this thing in the shadows. And this umbrella, as I might call it, is no ordinary umbrella. On the hot side, 200,000 watts of solar radiation strikes it, and it can only allow 0.02 watts to get through. This umbrella is setting up an almost 600 degree Fahrenheit difference. And if it were suntan lotion, it would have an SPF of 10 million.
And it's going to have to fold up, and we started talking about how to fold it up. And it's got to be bigger than the Hubble telescope, and it's got to get way out there, and we can't get it there without a pretty big rocket. So what's the biggest one you can get? Well, it's not all that big. We're going to have to make a telescope that's much bigger than the Hubble and simultaneously much lighter. We ended up at half the mass and 7 times the collecting area.
All 13,670 pounds, all 6 metric tons of this has to be launched 1 million miles out in outer space. And it has to fit into a fairing that's only about 5 meters in diameter, when the size of this sun shield is 21 meters in diameter. So to do that, we have to fold it up like origami so that it fits into here.
Pretty soon we know our job is pretty hard. Okay, gonna have lots of inventions along the way. So we made up a list of 10 inventions that we had to have pretty quickly. And we said, okay, world, tell us how you can make these inventions.
You have to keep in mind a lot of the technologies for Webb were new technologies, right? So you have a plan on how you're going to do it. And when you are testing it, lots of times something doesn't work. You have a schedule, a certain amount of time, and a certain amount of money.
Basically, people, although they don't quite say so, they think, your telescope looks weird. So our telescope does look different from every other telescope you've ever seen. It doesn't look like Galileo's little tube with a lens at each end. Way different from anything that we've ever built for anywhere before.
We're building a perfectly great telescope on the ground. We're aligning on the ground. We're testing on the ground. It's going to work perfectly, right? It's going to be great. Then what do? We bust it up. We fold it up. We put it into a launch vehicle. Then once we get it on orbit and it deploys, now we got to realign it on orbit remotely.
50 of the most complex deployments ever attempted robotically.
The telescope looks weird, but that's a matter of perspective. To me, it looks beautiful.
So that's your mission if you choose to accept it.
Yes, we had 344 single-point failures, 295 of which were associated with deployment, almost all of which would have been mission-ending.
So with Webb, we should probably go back to 1990 with the launch of the Hubble Space Telescope.
And liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery with the Hubble Space Telescope, our window on the universe.
NASA launches the Hubble Space Telescope, the biggest space science mission ever.
Discovery Houston, performance is nominal.
And shortly thereafter, it's discovered that its vision is blurry.
The conclusion we've come to from that is that there's a significant spherical aberration appears to be present in the optics.
I was devastated because I'd worked my entire career on Hubble at that point.
Congress had hearings.
Hubble's the butt of late-night TV jokes. It becomes a major embarrassment and major black eye for the agency.
Although the surface of the mirror was perfectly smooth, the smoothest mirror ever made by humans on Earth, the trouble is it was too flat at the edges, about 1/millionth of an inch, which is less than the diameter of human hair. But that was enough to cause the tremendously blurry images that we saw. My neighbors, who all used to be very, happy and congratulating me on working at Hubble, they'd come up to me when I'm pushing my son around in the stroller and say, "Boy, it must be tough working on a national disaster."
200 feet.
We can characterize the problem, the spherical aberration problem, well enough that we can take advantage of an insurance policy that we haven't talked much about. And that is, we started a long time ago to plan a maintenance program. That is, every 3 years we plan to go up with the space shuttle, change out instruments, change out things that broke.
I come to NASA in 1991 as part of the team to help fix the Hubble Space Telescope. I end up leading a team that's developing corrective optics for the telescope. Astronauts install the corrective optics and a new updated camera.
It's completely awesome out here. A lot of work, but well worth it.
And after 5 EVAs, spacewalks, the astronauts came home, and about 2 weeks later we took off the bandages from our eyes, and suddenly Hubble was fixed. It was totally fixed.
The most significant contact lens in American history. Over here is the picture taken after the servicing mission.
And it works beautifully, in fact, better than original requirements. And it's still working today as one of the most powerful instruments of science ever created.
This is one of the things about building JWST. We didn't have that luxury at L2, where we couldn't service it. We knew that.
The L2 point is chosen for the Webb telescope because it's the first place where you can go, where the Earth and the Sun are always in the same direction, and so you can put up your one-sided umbrella and protect your telescope, which you want to do either to keep the telescope cold, like the Webb. If you send it another few feet farther out, it'll eventually escape and go away from Earth. If you let it stay a few feet closer in, it'll fall back towards Earth and have some kind of interesting chaotic orbit. Anyway, you wouldn't like that. So it's the boundary between Earth orbit and solar orbit, and that's a good place.
We knew that this mission was going to require a number of production facilities and test facilities that didn't exist in the world.
Right from the very beginning, we were told to please develop an international partnership to construct the Webb telescope.
Webb is a global effort. NASA, ESA, CSA, and contractors all working together. It was 14 countries and more than 29 states all contributing to Webb.
I always called it the giggle factor a little bit. Like, can we really do this?
This new telescope has, I think, about 64 megapixels.
It's not like we could build and test things in those early days. So we were living in virtual land as far as computer simulations, computer modeling. We had picked our architecture in late 2002, and obviously that's when things got really, really busy with trying to make this architecture feasible. Because I would say even at that point we were not quite sure it would all work at that time. It just seemed so far out.
Let's keep making progress on the telescope, because the more we get done, the better the chance that this thing will keep going as a program.
I think of the technologies, the ones that I remember were most challenging were developing the material for the primary mirrors. We had a big effort to determine what that material would be.
And it was a kind of exotic choice. We chose a material called beryllium, which is element number 4 in the periodic table. It's extremely stiff, extremely light.
It was the cryogenic properties of beryllium that really won out. It's how stable it was at cold temperatures, and its thermal conductivity, how thermally stable things were.
When we mine the ore, we have to drill through and blast the rhyolite and remove that to get the volcanic ash layer where the beryllium is. 10,000 years ago, this was the bottom of Lake Bonneville, and millions of years ago, it was an ancient ocean.
So then it's pressed into this 550-pound block that's then machined out till it's about 50 pounds. Once that block is machined out to about 50 pounds, the backside is honeycombed. It's really cool looking. The front side gets polished. We're attaching motors to the back so the mirrors can actually move and flex up in space so they can align. Then what we do is we actually subtract off gravity. So we're building this in a place that has gravity. This telescope operates in space that has no gravity. The temperature change that happens between Earth and space actually deforms the mirror significantly.
You literally polish, the wrong surface into a mirror so that when they cool down and they change their shape as they cool, it's the right surface.
And so we actually make the mirror less good on Earth so it can be more perfect in space.
We would then send them to Huntsville, Alabama, where we would test them at Marshall, and we would cool them down to these very cold temperatures and measure with a special test device how they change as they cool down.
Let's talk a little bit about those 18 iconic gold mirrors that are actually on this telescope. Amber, can you tell us about the science behind those mirrors?
So the reason the mirrors are gold in the first place is because gold is a good reflector of infrared light. So we've already talked about how Webb will view the universe in the infrared part of the spectrum. And that means it will see light that's just a little bit more red than visible light, than what your eyes can see. And so it turns out that gold reflects that type of light really well. So that's sort of the science behind why the mirror is gold.
So these are things that people don't realize it takes to get a telescope like the Webb telescope built.
But every week that went by, we started getting questions of like, why is this taking so long? And is this going to go on for, and there was a lot of pressure.
Okay, the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology come to order. The James Webb Space Telescope has been identified by the astrophysics community as its top priority.
There were voices out there. There was talk of, let's cancel this thing. There was always a concern of mine personally from long before. We could end up like the superconducting super collider, right? Don't want Webb to end up like that. A really large science project ended up being too much and too long, and people lost the stomach to see it through.
Thank you for the question.
Congress got really worried about our Webb telescope and said, isn't that kind of crazy not to be able to service it? And the answer is, yeah, that's the only choice we had.
The James Webb Space Telescope is another case study of NASA's mismanagement.
I know this is
how can we
justify
I hope that we don't lose sight of why the United States is undertaking this complex mission in the first place.
If James Webb is fully funded, NASA will be on track to launch the largest and most powerful space observatory ever built.
The average person would be like, I couldn't, bear the pressure and anxiety and stuff. And what's the secret?
How do you handle the pressure of something like this is an amazing question. I will say the bonds that we built through failure and then through success, of course, it was a family. We argued.
The position is the mom, mission operations manager, and it was the job is kind of sometimes like being the mom for everybody. So everybody in here, I almost, you get to the point where you're almost personally putting them into the positions, and you're kind of helping them grow into what's going to happen. You're trying to prepare them, because I would tell people that it was a very stressful job as we got closer. And you had to kind of work with people to help them deal with the stress and stuff like that. So it was, you tend to be a mom, be a good friend.
And we all knew the risks. We all knew this wasn't a sure thing. None of us left. That's what I'm proud of.
First and foremost, we were ourselves, and we brought our strengths and we brought our colorful parts of ourselves. The way we survived, ultimately though, if I could attribute to one thing is, the more the naysayers came at us, the more we as a team bound together. If the naysayers thought they were gonna cancel this program by what they did, they only made us stronger.
In the early times, up until now practically, the budget was not what the project actually required. The budget was what people could get for us. And so it didn't change until Senator Mikulski wrote a letter and said, "We're tired of hearing from you guys. When are you going to tell us the real number?" She didn't say it in those words exactly, but please stop embarrassing us. So what's the real number?
2, 1. Senator?
Good morning, Goddard. How are we today? I am so happy to be here with you in the new year.
What led to us persisting were people like Senator Mikulski, who was a huge advocate for Webb and for NASA Goddard and for science in general. The science community was largely solidly behind Webb because they knew the potential this thing had and how important it was.
When we go into space, we don't go to conquer, we go to discover new things about the universe.
We finish assembling it and ship it off to NASA.
We really don't know any much about it. We know that it was 18 pieces. We have pictures of what it was like. And get back. And that's about it. Everything else is sort of secretive. We just take it from point A to point B. Each mirror is worth about 20. And we have 3 in the trailer, so that's $60 million. And if we drove the truck thinking constantly that there was $60 million in the trailer, we'd probably just drive ourselves crazy and nervous wreck up here. We just have to treat it like everything else and drive it and do our job. Bye, guys. That new space mirror thing that we're carrying in the trailer, it's going to be a little over 1 million miles away, and we've driven 1.3 million on the last truck, so it's going to be really far. I can tell you, because 1 million miles is a long time behind the wheel of a truck, so I can tell you 1 million miles far away is a long distance. It's real. I've seen it. I've seen crates that the mirrors go in. I've seen the drawing of what the mirrors are going to look like once it's put together. You've got 18 of them all hooked together, so then you have to imagine that they're folding each one of these up and then they're opening all up at the same time. It's just like a flower. It's going to be beautiful.
I have a little trouble sleeping knowing that these mirrors are on a truck crossing the country. So these are the final 3 mirror segments for the James Webb Space Telescope. So yeah, an incredible milestone here today. Exciting.
Worth getting up early for.
Absolutely, worth getting up early and standing here in the cold, sure. These mirrors will literally see light from the first galaxies that were born in the universe. So exciting stuff. This is where we take all the VIPs that come through Goddard. So you guys are definitely VIPs.
Oh my God.
So yeah, this is the world's biggest clean room of its type. And if you look right up there, you'll see the familiar pods that have been on your truck over the last year.
They're gorgeous.
They are. They're beautiful.
Remarkable.
And so this big yellow structure here is where we're going to assemble the mirrors onto the back plane of the telescope. So it'll sit flat, and then that robotic arm right over there will take all the mirrors and place them down on the back plane. So yeah, we have to keep everything clean so that once it gets out to the clean part of space, it's, it's already clean. Mm-hmm.
It really is clean.
Yeah, and I mean, you see the guys in the bunny suits down here, so they have to stay protected. And that whole wall over here is air filters.
So I guess you can't smoke in there.